Hello, everyone. Welcome. I see people joining our Zoom. My name is Ines Yavad, and I'm the lead Next Generation Fellow for the UN Foundation. And it's my utmost pleasure to welcome you all to our COP28 Engine Room Pit Stop, the final engine room moment for the year. And wow, what a year it has been. The journey so far has seen the engine room mobilize more than 3,000 young people since launching only 9 months ago. This network of young thinkers, innovators, and activists, including many of you here today, has led projects in your communities around the world, from Mali to Pakistan, India, Australia, Colombia, Afghanistan, and the Philippines. You've also contributed to the SDG Summit Insights paper, which put forward young people's proposals for what a successful SDG Summit would look like. You galvanized action throughout the engine room pit stops, coming together to learn, be inspired, share your ideas, and encourage others to do the same. You also rallied young leaders to bring their call to action to world leaders in the Engine Room Challenge, as young voices from around the world were amplified as they challenged world leaders to forge a better future for us all. You also helped to input into the creation of the Road to 2100, which I actually have here on my desk upside down, a 5-year roadmap for getting a youth-led vision for 2100. And you guided the initial development stages of the Unlock Funders Collective, which will be launching in 2024 with the ambition to unlock increased and improved funding for young leaders. I don't know about you, but that feels like a lot to achieve in 1 year. And that brings us to today. While many of you have been on this journey with us since we started, for some, this may be your first time joining the engine room. And you, I would like to say welcome to you, a huge welcome and a quick overview on why we exist. I will start with a bit about us. So we are the United Nations Our Future Agenda team. And I say we because there are many people behind the scenes who have made today happen. And you will see a few of us throughout the event, either in the chat or also speaking on screen. And we work to act as a bridge for you to have an impact on the global issues that you care most about. What is our mission? It's to create a world where intergenerational collaboration thrives and every young person gets the resources and opportunities they need to succeed. Home to the United Nations Foundation Next Generation Fellows and the Unlock the Future Coalition, we connect young people with leaders of the largest youth-led organizations and the UN to design their future. As part of this mission, we host the Engine Room, where you are right now. The Engine Room works to drive action and influence the global agenda ahead of key global moments, spotlight the work of our young changemakers, lead and contribute to opportunities for young people to be heard in the global agenda, and mobilize for key moments through 4 pit stops. You are at pit stop number 4 for this year right now. And the global moment that this pit stop draws its attention to is COP28, the United Nations Climate Change Conference that is launching in less than 2 weeks. COP28 will be a milestone moment when the world will take stock of its progress on the Paris Agreement. The first global stocktake will provide a comprehensive assessment of progress since adopting the Paris Agreement. This will help align the efforts on climate action, including measures that need to be put in place to bridge the gaps in this progress. So needless to say, this is a pretty important moment for the global community. And this is why we've brought you all together today to inspire and inform you on the important issues surrounding COP. To do this, we have enlisted the help of leading experts in the climate landscape. We have frontline activists, grassroots innovators, leaders working at the heart of COP28 proceedings, and futurists who work tirelessly to chart a course for a better future for us all. But before we dive right in, I know I've spoken a lot, and before I introduce to our incredible speakers, I would like to check in on where we're all starting from. So that's where we can take the journey together and start off with our first poll. These global moments can often feel complex and hard to fully understand. So I would love to know, do you feel like you know what COP is? I know that when I went to my first COP, I was certainly very overwhelmed. And I was kind of smiling and nodding, even though I didn't fully understand. And I know many of you may have felt the same way, or you've not been to a COP and you're trying to piece it together and there are still elements that confuse you. Or are you potentially COP obsessed? I know people in our team certainly are. So looking at the responses on the poll, most people are see COP as a bunch of people in a room talking. People are thinking about COP a lot, but it seems like a lot of the people in the room do know what COP is and why it's important. So let's give us a little bit of an idea of where everyone's passions are at with the second poll launching in just a minute. And if you go to COP, what one thing would you want us to focus on? I think you can see it on your screen now. Would it be about negotiations, relationship building, campaigning, or going into what some of our members of our team called sponge mode, where you're all about learning? What would it be for you? Thanks to everyone who's responding. I see a lot of people focusing on negotiations, which is the heart of COP. Many people on connections, others on campaigning, others on learning. I think there's a great variety of answers. So I am pleased to share that we have just the person to shed some light and inspiration on COP reflections. The ineffable Saad Amer is going to kick us off with our first keynote. He is a leading climate activist and environmental justice expert, founder of Justice Environment, a social impact consultancy that helps businesses, governments, and nonprofits navigate sustainability and the just transition. As one of the country's most prolific voting rights organizers, he has reached millions and created campaigns featuring the likes of Vice President Al Gore, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Taylor Swift. He is also a consultant to the United Nations and served as an expert reviewer to the IPCC's AR6 report. Fancy, right? So without further ado, I will hand over to the incredible Saad Amer. Over to you.
Hi, everybody. I see someone in the chat asking me for tickets to the Eras Tour, and unfortunately, I don't even have tickets to the Eras Tour. So if someone could hook me up with that, that would be great. Hi, everybody. My name is Saad Amer. It's so nice to be here with you all and to talk about COP, talk about climate, talk about the future. I think we're in such an important pivotal moment in the global landscape of policy and in these environmental discussions. And, you know, it is so pivotal that we create spaces like this where we're able to come together and speak with each other. So thank you to the UN Foundation for having me today and for creating this series of engine room pit stops, because I think it's really important to have these touch points as we talk about global policy, because frankly, a lot of the times young voices are left out of these spaces. And so having these dialogues is really important. So I want to start by jumping right into COP. I think I'll talk about a lot of things, but COP, I think, is the place to start, given that COP is literally 2 weeks away. And to be honest, I'm feeling very skeptical of our global systems right now. I don't think you have to turn on the news for very long to feel disgruntled over the situations that we're seeing all across the world. And when it comes to climate specifically, and COP, what we see this year is, you know, COP is the conference of parties, right? What that means is these are the member states of the United Nations coming together with the UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And we see these annual discussions focusing on climate change and climate policy. Each year, they take place in a different country. And each year, that country decides a lot of how those discussions go down. Now, what we've seen happen from the get-go, from the beginning of conversations on the climate crisis, is the influence of fossil fuels. You know, we know that companies like ExxonMobil have been quite well aware of the climate crisis from their own research since the 1970s. And the influence of fossil fuels on global discussions on climate policy is undeniable. This year, the head of COP discussions in Dubai is actually the CEO of one of their biggest oil companies. Now, specifically when you're having conversations on climate and they're being led by an oil CEO, how well do you think those discussions are going to go? Right? I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, we're going to save the world at COP28. In fact, I'm not even going. And it is really disappointing to me to see how so many discussions behind the scenes at the UN happen around this specific topic, but so few people are actually confronting it and talking about the, abysmal impacts that having an oil CEO in charge of COP will really have. And a lot of people make the argument, but oh, Saad, don't you think that they deserve a seat at the table? No, I absolutely don't think they need a seat at the table. If you were having lung cancer, would you invite the head of a tobacco company to sit there with you and your doctor? No. Why would they be in the room? Clearly, they're the problem. Clearly, they've got to go. And at a time when we know we have to confront this reality of the climate crisis, and we know that we're facing all these deadlines, we're still playing these games. And when I look at the history of COPs, right, this year we will see COP28, meaning that we've had 27 COPs prior to this. Probably one of the most significant things to come out of COP is, I'm sure you've all heard about the Paris Accord, which was from COP21 in the year 2015. And I remember exactly when this came out. I remember all of my teachers and all my classmates were so excited about the fact that the Paris Accord had come out. And finally, over 190 member nations of the United States have come together to sign on to agree to reduce our emissions and limit global warming. Now, that at this point, 2015 was like 8 years ago. And we are nowhere on track to meeting any of our reductions on carbon to actually achieving that. And so even when we had this big global doctrine, which was one of our first major attempts to limit our global warming, we still haven't done it. It's been 8 years. Our emissions have only gone down once, and that was in the year 2020. And as I'm sure you remember, there was a global pandemic. And so even in the context of a global pandemic, of our global economy being shut down, travel just canceled across the board, even in that context, the reduction in emissions was only 6% globally. And so if we are so unable to reduce our emissions, and even these global doctrines are not actually reducing emissions, it's incredibly disappointing. And with COP, we saw even last year, there were more representatives from COP than youth. There were more representatives from oil companies at COP than we saw youth, than we saw from almost every single nation. And so when you have this outsized influence of these bad actors who are literally the problem, and then you see the outcome documents and resolutions coming out of these discussions, failing to even mention the word fossil fuels. Last year was the first time we saw it actually mentioned after literally 26 COPs. And even then, it was a major conversation to say if we need to phase out or phase down emissions from fossil fuels. And the idea that that was even a discussion, that even at this point, we still can actually say that we need to phase out fossil fuels, it is wild, because we know that that's the problem. And I'm not here to sugarcoat the reality of this situation. There is so many things that are lacking from these discussions, and I've been quite disappointed by these global frameworks. At the same time, I will say that there are some things that are changing, right? It's not all bad news. I do think that people like us who are in these discussion rooms are changing the game. The fact that I can come here and say this to you is an example of how things are changing, because previously voices like mine were silenced or just removed from the conversations entirely. And I know that many of you are attending COP, and many of you should. There is such an opportunity there on the ground to organize and mobilize. And when I've been in discussions at the United Nations, having meetings face to face with some of these ministers, ambassadors, leaders can literally change the discussions and can change what actually gets written into global policy. I've, personally helped work in and get things from intersectional environmentalism to increasing renewable energy investments to all sorts of things written into global discussions via just being in the room. And so I don't want to say that that's not important. The power of youth, as Taylor is saying in the discussion, the power of youth is undeniable. And, recently during Climate Week, which is, I should give a little context. Right now, I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm in town to do a conversation at the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, tomorrow. But typically, I'm in New York City. I'm based in New York, and I live kind of down the street from the United Nations, and I work as a consultant there as well. So I'm there pretty often. And I was doing a lot of organizing during Climate Week NYC back in September, which also overlaps with the United Nations General Assembly. So you have a lot of world leaders in town, you have a lot of big events, a lot of NGOs all coming together to do some powerful organizing and get conversations going. And during that time, one of the big hallmark events is there's always a big climate strike that takes place during Climate Week. And this year, we were expecting there to be a couple thousand people to come out at this march. Instead, we had 75,000 people march with us in the March to End Fossil Fuels. That's not nothing. That's powerful. And it's especially powerful because the march route that we took walked and marched through Midtown Manhattan straight to the office, straight to the United Nations itself. And so when we talk about the power of demonstration, it goes a long way because literally right then, I also had, with a bunch of other young leaders, a meeting with the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres of the United Nations. And in that conversation, we were able to directly ask him and propose so many changes and ask for bigger funding, ask for centering environmental justice, ask for centering all of these global communities, and see that in a lot of cases, he was on board, but needs more support. We need to keep mobilizing. We need to keep organizing. We need to keep marching. Whatever that looks like in your country, that's what we need to bring forward. And so there is so much opportunity for change and hope. And I know that while things might seem dismal, change is possible. So thank you all so much for joining me. I'll drop my Instagram and Twitter in the chat if you want to follow me for later and for any other opportunities to engage. But thank you so much for having me. And I'm going to pass it back to Inez.
Thank you so much, Sad, and for joining us also in the middle of different commitments. I feel like I'm going to be saying wow a lot today, but wow. I remember the phase out, phase down disappointment at the end of COP as well. Thank you for not sugarcoating that, but thank you also for showing your commitment and raising your voice and not letting it be silenced. Let's keep changing that narrative, and everyone on the call is ready to do that. We were also at the march in New York and actually have some content of amazing young climate leaders who we filmed there that will be coming out on our Instagram, but that we'll keep talking about that later. It is now my pleasure to introduce Anita, one of the UN Foundation Next Generation Fellows, who's going to help us embrace our inner futurists and explain something that I have referred to briefly earlier, as it's going to be the North Star of our engine room next year, the road to 2100. Anita, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Inez, for that. Oh, wow. That picture looks completely different from who I am in actual reality. But yeah, thank you so much for that very warm introduction. And as Inez said, I am Anita Yuama. I
Funny
am
thing
a Next
about
Generation Fellow.
doing live streams is that
Sorry. Yeah, so as I was saying, I am a Next Generation Fellow for Gender Equality with the UN Foundation, and I am excited to be taking you through the road to 2100. So please follow along with me. Now, let's face it, our world is changing rapidly and feeling more unstable than ever before. Our global population has almost doubled in just 50 years, from 4 billion to 8 billion people. And half of these people are under the age of 30, making the next generation the largest in history. However, slow progress on the SDGs puts the future at risk, with nearly 300 million young people unable to read nor comprehend a simple story. Moreover, the looming threat of climate change is a pressing concern, with 2 out of 3 young people living in countries highly susceptible to ecological damage within their lifetime. International cooperation needs young people. Young people are the natural champions of international collaboration and addressing challenges that no single country alone can tackle. However, unfortunately, trust in global solidarity is not built by faith alone. Young people crave concrete evidence that international systems can and will deliver sustained outcomes to enhance their lives, particularly in a world that has been riddled with crises. Looking ahead towards the world by 2100, our future faces many interlocking challenges that impact people, the planet, peace, prosperity, and partnerships, the fundamental principles, 5 Ps, of the SDGs. Young people and young countries are a vital role in tackling these challenges, as investments in them will shape the course of the future generations. Now let's get into the 5 Ps. People. The global population is expected to reach 10.3 billion by 2100, with almost 84% living in cities across young countries. Planet. Global temperatures is set to rise by 2.7 degrees Celsius by 2050, overshooting the Paris Agreement targets. And as the UNSG puts it, we have transcended global warming, and we are now living in an era of global boiling. By 2100, ocean acidification will have tripled, and 23% of Earth's natural habitats will have completely disappeared. On to the next P, peace. 150 million people are expected to face extreme poverty by 2030, and this is in this decade due to rising conflict. And most impacted by this will primarily be young women and girls. Prosperity. It will take us another 132 years to close the gender equity gap, with most young women and girls likely to find themselves at the sharpest edge of this divide by 2100. Partnerships. Young countries spend 5 times more on debt than on the SDGs, with debt growing at 60 times faster than their domestic revenues, which hinders investments in the future. Now, this is why we need to take a bold and transformative approach to redesign our systems and designing our shared future. The Road to 2100, developed by the Unlock the Future Coalition, is designed to meet this imperative to unlock the potential of the next generations to be designers of their own future. Hosted by the UN Foundation, the Unlock the Future Coalition is a powerhouse of ambition and hope, gathering the world's largest youth-focused organizations under one banner to unlock a better future for the next and future generations. The Road to 2100 is not just the plan for the future, it is a strategy to speed up the final push towards the implementation of the SDGs and to inspire global change, take action for the future, and ensure that no generation is left behind. So together, we are going to rally political support and accountability by engaging champions, advocates, and visionaries from all across the world to promote action and accountability. We will also be exploring 2100 trajectories, looking into the future scenarios to map the next generation's needs and identify smart buys for the future. These are the investments, the innovative investments, with the power to truly shift our current course. We will also be resourcing the future and activate a generation of young change makers, just like you and I, by unlocking increased and improved funding for young change makers. And it will not stop there. We will also be jumpstarting the engine room for the future, and that's where you come in. As we relaunch the engine room in 2024, it will become the beating heart of the Road to 2100, driving intergenerational vision for the future. And lastly, we will inspire through storytelling, using creative mediums to bring the world of 2100 to life, reflecting on collective dreams and
I think we may have just lost Anita. It might not just be me. we will try and get Anita back. I know everyone was probably very excited by what she was sharing, and then connection in South Africa is not always the easiest. So I'll just give her a minute. Otherwise, I may have to jump in and finalize these slides for her. All right, I might jump in, guys. Sorry, you're gonna see me a bit more than was planned. But Anita was just sharing about the Unlock the Future Coalition and also this Road to 2100, which isn't just a plan for the future, it's a strategy that will help us speed up action. So what are we gonna do is what she was sharing, rallying political support, exploring 2100 trajectories. We will also resource the future and activate a generation of young change makers, just like you, by unlocking increased and improved funding for young change makers. And we aren't stopping there. We're also jumpstarting the engine room, which is where she stopped at, and it will become the beating heart of the Road to 2100, driving this intergenerational vision for the future. And lastly, we will inspire through storytelling, using creative mediums to bring the world of 2100 to life, reflecting your collective dreams and ambitions for the future and truly winning hearts and minds for this movement. The Road to 2100 draws from the shared wisdom of young changemakers and experts, inspiring a 2100 roadmap that serves as a springboard to tackle current and future challenges throughout global cooperation. It positions the Summit of the Future in 2024 as a stepping stone to reflect on past lessons and focus on empowering next and future generations seeking to leverage this once-in-a-generation opportunity to reimagine the multilateral system. To make this vision a reality, we will be inviting governments, international organizations, civil society, the private sector, and young people worldwide to join this collective effort as we embark on the road to 2100. Sounds exciting, right? Well, it will all be taking off in 2024, and we want you to be a part of it. Yes, you. You can sign up right now for the 2024 Engine Room and become an integral part of bringing this vision to life. Voices of young people from around the world need to be heard in this journey, and we hope you will all join us in the movement for a brighter future. If you want to be a part of this global community, please sign up using the form that's just been sent in the chat box. And I know there were quite a few people asking before, how can we mobilize and connect together? This is your way to engage. I'm excited to be seeing you all next year as part of the 2024 Engine Room. And thank you so much for listening to this. I hope we can have Anita back. But for now, I can say I'm very excited. And before we dive straight in, I would love to get a feeler from you on how you're feeling about this. So you'll see another poll going up on your screen. How does thinking about 2100 make you feel? Are you excited, hopeful, feeling a bit numb or neutral or shaking in your boots? How are you feeling? Wow, hopeful. Oh, I love that hope is the thing that most people are feeling, but excitement as well. Some people are still feeling a bit nervous, which is fine because that nervousness can be turned into action. And we're going to go through a quick round of polls now. So if you weren't able to answer, don't worry. Next poll coming your way. How do you feel about having the chance to take our future into our own hands and co-create a vision and roadmap for 2100? So we'll have the next poll coming up where you can answer just that question. Oh, I just got a message from Anita saying her internet dropped. No worries. I know a few of you on the call also may experience those problems. You're always welcome to come back to us if your connection drops. But as I'm looking at the answers in this poll, how do you feel about having the chance to co-create this vision? Sign me up, most people are saying. I want to help. Please tell me how. I just told you guys, go into the chat and you can see the link that has been posted by one of my colleagues. Please do join us. Great. Okay, I'm saying that no one thinks it's too complicated and no one thinks that they don't have anything to add. So that's fantastic. Next poll coming up your way is, we've just given you a buffet of options on things to get excited about. But which one of the areas would you be most passionate about contributing to? Peace, prosperity, planet, people, partnerships? Or are you like me and do you just want to choose them all? And I know that's a tough choice to make in just a few seconds, but understandably, because today we're talking about COP, a lot of people are interested in planet. So I can see that popping up. Peace as well, someone in people, some partnerships. No one has put prosperity so far, which is interesting because I believe they're all interlinked. Oh, there you go. Thank you, one person who just voted for prosperity. We have at least one person for each of the areas. Amazing. Thank you so much. So while I encourage you to channel that excitement into signing up for the engine room, we can also direct it onto our next panel, where we are fortunate to hear from two incredible climate leaders who are exceptionally well equipped to help us understand what we can expect from COP28. This segment will be moderated by another one of our phenomenal Next Generation Fellows, Bhuti, who comes with a huge breadth of experience in the climate space himself. Not only does he work in the Office of Strategic Affairs in Abu Dhabi, he leads the thematic track for the Next Generation Fellows on climate and the engine room, but he's also the president of the Arab Youth Council for Climate Change. Bhuti, over to you.
Thank you so much, Enes, and welcome everyone to our panel discussion, which is gearing up for the COP28. My name is Bhuti Al-Mheri, talking to you from Abu Dhabi, and I am the UN Foundation Next Generation Fellow for Climate. As you know, and as we approach to the 28th Conference of the Parties, this panel aims to shed light on the potential outcomes and strategic directions of this significant event, with a focus on aligning with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Our discussion today will delve into various aspects of the COP28, including its expected impact, challenges, and the role it plays in shaping our global future as youth. We are thrilled to have with us today an esteemed panel who will offer their insights and perspectives. As we navigate through this enlightening discussion, we encourage you to be an active participant. Please feel free to type and submit your questions at any time during the panel. Your engagement is key to making this dynamic and fruitful conversation. I welcome Fernando, who is a program manager for the COP28 Youth Climate Champion team, leading the Global Consultations Program, as well as being a driving force behind the ambitious International Youth Climate Delegates Program, which is providing funding and training for up to 100 young people from small island development states, least developed countries, and various marginalized communities from around the world to participate at the COP28. As well as I have here Saoirse. Saoirse is the only Irish winner of RISE, which is an initiative supported by Schmidit Futures and the Rhodes Trust. She is one of 14 people sitting on the C40 Global Youth and Mayors Forum, and is the founder of a Fridays for Future in Limerick City, and a founding member of Fridays for Future Ireland. Saoirse is the youngest UN advisor in history, representing Western Europe on the Secretary General's Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change. Welcome, Fernando and Saoirse. And I would love to start the panel by asking this question. What is something we can expect from the COP28 that we won't find on Google? The question to you, Fernando.
Yes, of course. Can everyone hear me well? Yes? Okay, great. Well, first of all, it's so delightful to be here. This is my second engine room, and it's just so inspiring to connect with all of you. And yeah, truly, this is an incredible initiative, and it's wonderful to just be included in this. So thank you so much to the organizers, and it's great to share this dish with Saoirse. We met at the UN General Assembly in New York City. So yeah, I mean, to your question, Bhuti, what can you expect at COP that is not, that you're not going to find on Google? Basically, we think that truly this COP is going to be one of the most inclusive ever. We have, for the first time, a youth climate champion role, which sits in the COP28 leadership. Last time I joined the engine room, I spoke a bit more about the role itself.
So it's building upon the incredible initiative that the COP27 presidency had to appoint a youth envoy. The COP28 presidency appointed Her Excellency Shama to be the youth climate champion, sitting with the leadership structure to really advocate for the full participation of young people throughout the COP. But to not take as much time in explaining, the history of the role, what are some of the things that you can find at COP that's not going to be Googleable? So first of all, we're really trying to mainstream youth throughout the 2-week agenda at the COP. So if you're able to make it, you'll find that pretty much on every single day, there's something related to youth. This is the second time that the mandated youth forum that came out of COP26 is being delivered. So the first time was at COP27. So there's gonna be essentially dialogues every day led by YOUNGO, the Youth and Children Constituency to the UNFCCC, on areas such as loss and damage, health, gender, finance, adaptation, etc. There's gonna be events on, mental health and the climate crisis, indigenous roundtables. Anyways, there's just gonna be a lot. So, if you're a young person or anybody that wants to get involved in youth inclusion, youth programming, there's a lot for you to see. One of the 2 main events that we are organizing is the culmination of this youth, the Youth Climate Forum that I just mentioned. And then, of course, the launch of the Youth Stocktake Report, which is the first ever analysis of youth inclusion in the UNFCCC process. And then for the first time ever, there's also going to be a handover of the Global Youth Statement during the World Climate Action Summit, which is those first 2 days where you see all the world leaders together. So it's going to be an opportunity to platform this Global Youth Statement that was prepared with input from about 700,000 young people. And for the first time, it's going to be presented in this very massive stage. So anyways, I'm happy to keep providing answers to questions, but basically there's going to be very historical moments for young people to be included in the COP throughout the 2-week agenda. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me more about it, but that's it for now. Buti, thank you so much.
Thank you, Fernando. I personally want to be part of these historical moments for the youth during the COP. Saoirse, firstly, are you participating at the COP this year? And please tell me, what do you expect from the COP28 that we won't find on Google?
So in terms of participating at COP, I plan to, but actually I'm applying to university right now, and my interviews for university will happen during COP. So I don't yet know what date it will be. So I don't know what week I'll be there. I know it's getting really close, but it's okay. I plan to be there. I just don't know what week. So we'll figure it out. And yeah, I think one of the most important things that isn't necessarily that you won't find on Google is mobilization of grassroots organizations. I think, not just inside the COP, but also at home. I think that's one of the most important things that we can do as individuals, whether or not we go to COP. And because I think it puts pressure on our leaders. It reminds them that we are there, that we want change, and that when they return home, we will still be there and we will still want change. I think there's a bit of a danger, with COP, that the discussions about the climate crisis are really only in the media and in wider government are only really kind of relegated to those 2 weeks. But I think grassroots organizations on the ground, protest movements have all been drawing attention to the climate crisis 365 days a year. So I think definitely that will be one of the really important things that we will have to look out for, both, like I said, inside the COP, but also at home. And I think that there will be a lot of mobilization this year at home, especially. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the pressure that people put on their leaders. And let's hope that it actually changes something this time.
Thank you, Saoirse. So since there's a possibility you won't be able to come to the COP in person, I want to ask Fernando, what can people who are not physically present at the COP28 to do when they have their voices and to increase the impact of their critical global moments?
Okay, I always lose the mute button. Well, first of all, so we are collaborating very, very closely, as I mentioned, with Yango, the Youth and Children constituency to the UNFCCC. So Yango essentially, it's a great, if you're not part of Yango already, really highly recommend you to join them. They have a mailing list where you'll be able to participate in a lot of in many spaces related to the COP. They even have, call for people that want to go to COP, so to facilitate accreditation. So the first thing that I would say is if you can join the mailing list, because for all the Yango plenary interventions, so the spaces where youth voices are going to be represented, anyone that is part of Yango can provide virtual inputs. So that's something that you can do without being in Dubai, of course. There's also many working groups, again, dedicated to things like adaptation, mitigation, health, what have you. So you'll be able to also join chats that way and really provide your input into what is being discussed at COP. Yango is, they have a very consultative process, so that's going to be a very easy way for you to have your voice included in what's being said. I would also say, as you know, it's the conference of parties. So I would say that if you're able to advocate your own government in the build up to COP, to really take strong positions in the negotiations and advocacy around the nationally determined contributions, that is also a very good way for you to get involved. Of course, COP happening so soon. You may not have the chance to do that, but generally, I think those are very good ways for you to get connected. Also, again, since we're so close to the COP, this is not as relevant anymore. But throughout the year, there's these conferences of youth that are being organized. So there's local conferences of youth, regional conferences of youth, and the general conference of youth. And this is really an opportunity for young people everywhere to attend these different events where they can lend their voices, where they can contribute to policy recommendations. You can organize an elko yourself. There's been, I think this year, over 100 were organized. And then basically the days right before COP, there's a general conference of youth that happens in the country that is hosting COP. So that starts next week. So yeah, highly encourage you all to try to get involved in that. If not this year, of course, next year. But yeah, those are a few that I would say.
Yeah, Fernando, I think everyone who attended today now know how he or she will participate, at least virtually, and contribute to the COP. We have a question actually from one of our audience, and he or she is asking, what makes the upcoming COP28 more different and impactful than the previous one? Saoirse.
That is a difficult question. I think definitely, sorry, let me think about that for a second. I think there are certainly many different ways, but I think the best way to, and this is kind of, it's interesting because you won't know immediately after these decisions are made, but in terms of impact, I think impact is action. So how much action is actually taken from negotiations and from agreements. And you can agree on things and write up these big fancy agreements and have big fancy declarations, but ultimately if nothing comes of them, it's just more, you're just adding another declaration to the pile of white noise. I think that's a real concern with, things like COP, because there's the very real aspect that none of these agreements are legally binding. So even if countries sign on to them, there is that worry that they will turn around and do nothing. We see with the $100 billion, for example, that was promised in 2009, that has not yet been delivered. So I think it's really, if we view, for me, I view a successful COP as one that has actual impact, and by impact, I do mean action. And I think it is difficult to tell immediately, especially because COPs are yearly. So it's like, was it that COP that did that thing, or was it this one? But I think also, there is something to be said for things being brought to the table into the conversation that never have been brought there before. So, loss and damage was a really important one last year. And even one that we should be pushing for as well is mitigation from developed countries. So I think definitely there are things that even if we're just having conversations about things, even if they make it into agreements that are not necessarily as radical or as specific as we would like them to be, I do think those conversations are really important, and hopefully they kickstart that action that we so desperately need. But I think definitely for me, from one COP to another, it's the way that I can tell if something is successful or not, or more successful, is whether governments at home in their countries at a national level and a local level, or even at an international level in terms of their own advocacy, but whether they actually take action, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Saoirse. Action-oriented declarations is even more important than just stating, a couple of points that different countries agree on. And I think Fernando is working on a very action-oriented initiative, which is the International Youth Delegates Program. Fernando, if you can talk us more about it, what is the progress so far with the program? Are all the members of the delegations coming to Dubai this year?
Thank you so much. Yes, this is one of our flagship programs. To tell you just very briefly about it. The COP28 presidency in collaboration with the Youth Climate Champion and Youngo is fully funding and training 100 delegates coming mostly from climate affected communities. So we have 72 that have never been to a COP, 74 that come from a least developed country as SIDS or countries that are both. And we have also we also have people from conflict areas, people from indigenous communities, and people with disabilities. And we're really, really excited about this program because we think that there are many voices that are underrepresented at the COP. So the fact that, a lot of people from these countries that are most affected and that not often get a chance to be part of the process are coming. So we're super, super excited about that. So basically, since they were selected, they've been undergoing a very robust capacity building program, done in collaboration with the UNFCCC and Harvard University to really learn more about the different UNFCCC thematics, negotiation skills. And they will be arriving they're going to be arriving in Dubai next week for COI, and they're going to stay throughout the 2 weeks of COP. We also took them to various climate weeks and other events throughout the year to just really make sure that by the time they get to COP, they kind of hit the ground running, because as many of you responded to the first question, the UNFCCC process in COP can be very confusing. So happy to drop the bios of the delegates in the chat. Maybe there's someone from your country that you would like to connect with. And but we're super, super excited for our delegates. Thank you.
I look forward to meet them here in Dubai, Fernando. So as our final audience questions, in 1 or 2 sentences, what brings you hope when you think about the COP, and how can we build on this in the future years? Saoirse.
Yeah, that's also a difficult question. And if I'm honest, I went to COP26, and in COP27 I couldn't go because of exams, but I was at home watching. And I do worry a lot. I have a lot of concerns about the system of COP in general, and the fact that, we are going into our 28th COP. That's almost 3 decades of these conversations. And certainly things have happened at them that are very important. And I do think without things like the Paris Climate Agreements, we would be much worse off. So I'm not necessarily advocating for abolishing COPs, but I do think, and I also think it's really important to have an governmental space international space in general, where we discuss the climate crisis, because this is a global issue. So it's very, very important. But at the end of the day, we are still facing a crisis that it's not going away, it's getting worse. And we are beginning to see the effects of this crisis all over the world. And this crisis is rooted not just, in the way that we treat the environment, but also in our economic systems, in our social systems, in the way we actually view the planet, because we view it as a natural resource that is inexhaustible instead of something that is alive, something that is abundant, yes, but only in mediation. And I think COPs don't necessarily entertain the idea of system change. It's mostly the idea of dealing with the climate through the current system. And I don't know if that's possible because the current system is so deeply tied to the origins of the climate crisis. And so, yeah, that's kind of like the opposite to the question, I suppose, so far. So I do think not having hope about COP in many ways is the natural response, because the reality is, in many ways, we should be realistic about COP. We should be realistic about the capabilities of COP to actually achieve adequate climate justice for everyone. And I think that's really, really important. But at the same time, COP does facilitate spaces where activists from across the planet can come together and discuss this issue and bring it back to their own communities. Now, of course, everyone is not necessarily represented at COPs, and that's the thing that we also have to realize, like, how accessible are these spaces? But I do think that COP, like I notice, in Ireland that COP is, the media, for example, focuses on the climate crisis more around COP than at any other point in the year. So there is worth there. There is an importance that is associated with COP. But I do think we have to recognize as well that the only way the COP will work is if individual governments actually do something. But yeah, you know.
Thank you, Saoirse. Thank you so much for your input. Thank you, Fernando. I guess we have a lot of questions in here in the messages. Definitely, they can connect with you personally to ask you and learn from your experiences. And now I'll hand over to Enes to walk you through the Young Voice Big Idea segment.
Thank you so much, Booty, Fernando, and Saoirse. I know that conversation could have continued going on, and I'm sure it will continue on social media and beyond. And I know, as young people and as a young person myself, working with young people, and many of whom I see in the chat, I've seen Dalia from our Future Generations Action Group, Faisal from the Engine Room. I know we all have big ideas. And we don't only think about them, but we act on them. And today we'll have the opportunity to hear from 3 young people who are taking action. So Divyam, Ethel, and Humane will each have 3 minutes to share what solution they think needs to be taken seriously, what social cultural shifts they want to see, or what message they want young leaders to hear to help bring about a better world in 2100s. These visions will be inspiring and engaging. So as our speakers get ready, I want to hear from you again in another poll on ways that you've already brought about change. I know some of you on the call have been taking action through the Engine Room, launching your initiatives, participating in campaigns, volunteering around the world. But if you haven't yet taken action, don't worry. Listening to our next speakers hopefully will spark that, and it's a great space to start and get excited. And as I said before, you have the link in the chat if you want to sign up to take action through the Engine Room. I can see people have taken action in many ways: launching projects, volunteering, participating in campaigns. Fantastic. Well, so we've got, first up, a member of our very own Engine Room who's going to share with us today. Divyam is part of the Action Group on Climate and Sustainability, which Booty, who moderated the previous segment, leads. He's a passionate individual pursuing chemical engineering and economics from Delhi Technological University in India. He has leadership roles in organizations like Engineers Without Borders and is a Millennium Fellow that showcases his commitment to drive positive change in climate action and carbon neutrality. He is also the founder of Project Prakriti, and he's driving the democratization of decarbonization by developing a multi-purpose carbon credit marketplace. So I will pass over to him without further ado. Divyam, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Ines. I hope I'm audible for everyone. Thank you very much for the introductions, and I'm very grateful for the UNF as well as the Next Generation Fellows and Our Future Agenda for hosting this initiative, as well as bootstrapping the Engine Room as it is. So I'd like to share my journey with everyone in order to give them an idea what this entire initiative of Engine Room provides for anyone who wants to pursue their idea. But before that, I'd like to imbibe the philosophy which this Engine Room essentially holds. And takes together, which is be the change which you want to see. And I believe that the next generation fellows and the engine room as it is provides and facilitates yourself with and equips you with the facilities and the mentorship necessary in order to, actualize any idea which you have and any initiative which you have and help you scale them on a global level. So for me, it started with the big brainstorm where around 2,500 plus people, came together from 136 countries, and everyone mobilized together with climate action in their mind. Uh, Ideas were pitched, initiatives were taken, engagements were done, and this provided us with the global exposure. And which end of the day, all the ideas amalgamated into now what is ultimately tailored into Project Prakriti, which now is a youth-led and people-centric solution towards decarbonization. To give you a brief about Project Prakriti is we are making carbon financing and climate financing easy. So as we all know that the pressure on the climate is increasing, and by 2050, 2.7 degrees Celsius would be rising and increasing in the global temperatures, which is overshooting the climate agreement. And in order to mitigate that, we need around $4.3 trillion by 2030 in climate financing. So the money is ample in the world, and but the problem over here is financing towards climate. That the direction of the money and the flow to money is not going to the climate action, especially to the global south and the LDCs. That's where our project comes in. Project Prakriti aims at providing seamless carbon financing and climate financing of up to 500 million US dollar plus for the Indian clean energy transition as of now. We aim to do this by subsidizing the clean fuel, by automating the carbon financing of the carbon credit sales. Our project began by simple experiences on ground, working with the government, working with the industry, seeing the pain points. And now amalgamating everything into one place, we are proudly, working on the marketplace. And recently only, we have won the Shell Net Zero Challenge, where we are now collaborating with Shell in order to develop this platform and engage our platform for them in order to help that fuel giant also turn into a source of decarbonization and help not only Shell but other oil companies transition into cleaner fuels and subsidize those clean fuels. So that is our general idea right now, is to make the thought to be industries and thought to be sectors transition and have that clean transition enabled by climate financing and carbon financing, for which we are utilizing the sales of carbon credits. The major beneficiary of these would obviously be the LDCs and the global south, because they have the large potential of the clean energy transition as well as renewable energy penetration. And the beneficiary on the north end would be these large oil companies who have set the ambitious targets of net zero by 2030, 2035, 2050, but cannot make sudden changes in their operation and business operations, etc., since they also have shareholders and other ESG commitments to honor. So I think this is a win-win situation, and we'd love for us to be, and us, everyone, the youth engaged in Project Prakriti, to be that gap between the investors, the climate, and the corporates, and hence turn this entire decarbonization journey not a painstaking one for the corporates, for the people, but a healthy and happy one, enabling a steady and sustainable transition. So yes, I'd love to show the platform which we've created, but I think I'll give others also the opportunity, and maybe we can catch up with if anyone wants to engage with this further.
Thank you so much, Divyam. That was fantastic. And I loved how you shared about creating a healthy and happy process. And young people under 30 make almost half of the world's population. And a lot of them are in India, where you are. So I think this is a great initiative. And I look forward to more people joining you to make that even more a reality. I'm going to pass now to Ethel Amanda Bagaga, who is a passionate environment and climate action advocate working with Fridays for Future Uganda. She is committed to raising climate change awareness while driving sustainable change, and is the founder and team lead of Alma's Gardeners Village, Uganda. She's driving more than just meaningful and environmental impact, but really wholesomely involving communities in cultivating nature and nurturing beauty in all their different capacities in 2023. She was the winner of the UNICEF Youth Innovation Challenge Uganda with her cutting-edge solution of harnessing green energy out of invasive species, and she serves as the founder and team lead of Erudites Uganda, a green energy enterprise. So over to you for 3 minutes, Eva. I believe, oh, there we go. Here you are.
My name is Ito.
The sound is cutting off on my end. The audio is not working well. Maybe you can try shutting your video. Otherwise, we will, of course, make sure that your speech can be shared on social media and beyond. Let's try one more time. Yeah, I believe we can't hear you.
Let me video. I think, can you hear me now?
We can hear you better now. Let's try it one more time.
Okay. So my name is Issa Amanda Bagaga. I am from Uganda. It is good to be here to share this space with you, to be part of this discussion, honestly. Of course, talking about climate action, our journey to 2050. And honestly, the sound of 2050, we are talking about temperatures rising up to 2.7 degrees Celsius by 2050. And honestly, 2100, like a global furnace to me. To me, that's how it sounds. I don't know how it sounds to you people. It seems like we're headed into a global furnace. So, but I believe to get to 2100, I wish to highlight the importance of clean energy, helping communities build resilience to climate change, preparing these communities for potential impacts while responding to these climate-related challenges. So on that note, I really emphasize the importance of clean energy development on our journey to 2100, availing of financial resources, infrastructure, fostering resilience among these communities. So on that, of course, we are seeing young people all over the world championing climate action with notable innovations, environmentally friendly solutions, of course, aimed at reducing all these negative climate-related impacts on our planet, either as adaptation or as mitigation approaches. But yet, few of these innovations actually get to live long enough to see their next birthday. So I think this is mostly due to gaps in access to technology infrastructure compatible with these innovations, especially the cutting edge equipment, the software research, and even government policies themselves. So in a country like Africa, this alone has impeded the testing, uptake, and development of these innovations on this continent. So, however, I believe technology will give us safe passage to 2100, honestly. I think it is what will empower nations and communities to leapfrog traditional pathways, attempted climate action, onto approaches that greatly and directly launch us onto a net zero, while generating so much money, so much revenue for these nations. So today my message is simple. In the 3 minutes I have is to urge young leaders to lean further into clean technology. I call on us, public and private sector holders, to facilitate more investments in clean technology, infrastructure, and access of this technology, especially for the young people, so that we have ecosystems that will nurture them and sustain these very innovations. And then it is this same that will create capacity for young people to absorb and integrate this technology into their work, especially in regard to mitigation. So I think with this in place, I believe 2100 will mark the start of another century where we are on a trajectory to a net zero. and that there are systems in place that are able to hold onto the socio-economic state of the nations. So my message today is simple. I think technology is our safe boat to 2100. It is what is going to help in that mitigation and adaptation, especially for communities on a continent like Africa. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for being part of this call.
Thank you. I am so glad we were able to hear you. And some on the call may already have their wheels turning on how to better lean into clean technology and also make sure that we leave a better planet for future generations. And I know this is a topic Claudette, who is moderating a following segment, is very passionate about, but not too many spoilers because we have one more speaker to go and just 3 minutes for that. So Fumane, I will ask you to stick to your 3 minutes as well. Fumane is a second-year nursing student at the National University of Lesotho and a passionate advocacy champion of climate change under the Girl-Led Action on Climate program. She is passionate about taking action on climate change-related issues and champions the fact that addressing these issues is not just a matter of policy, but a moral imperative as well. Over to you.
Hello everyone, I am Fumane Matladi, the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts Climate Change Advocacy Champion. That is, I work to raise awareness on climate change issues and help come up with adaptive and mitigative measures towards climate change issues. The urgency of our mission cannot be overstated. The world stands on the cliff of an environmental crisis, and the window for action is narrowing every day. COP28 is not just another diplomatic event, it is a pivotal movement for our collective history. Our future and the very planet we call home depends on the decisions made at COP28. We've gathered here not just to discuss climate change, but to elevate the choices of the ones who will inherit the consequences of our decisions. Today, I'll delve into my vision for 2100, a year that symbolizes our hopes, our aspirations, and our responsibilities. I'd like us to imagine a world in 2100 where clean, so I'd like us to imagine a world in 2100 where clean energy sources power our cities and electric vehicles hum silently on our streets. The air is crisp and pure and our ecosystems are flourishing. But more than that, picture a world where gender equality is not just a slogan, but a fundamental principle that guides every decision and action we take. In this world, young leaders are at the forefront, driving change and challenging the status quo. They're narrating the future, they are shaping it. That's why this movement is so significant. Now, let me share with you a few of the several demand statements we as WACS will be calling on to decision makers at COP28. Gender-sensitive research, emphasizing the need to consider diverse impact of climate change on young women and girls and gender-diverse individuals in scientific studies. The second demand underscores the necessity of protecting young women and girls in climate-induced displacement, acknowledging the heightened vulnerabilities in the aftermath of environmental disasters. The third one focuses on capacity building for gender-inclusive resilience, advocating for investments in training, education, and skill development to empower women and young girls as active contributors to building a resilient future. Additionally, it highlights initiatives like the Girl-Led Action on Climate Change program, implemented in 13 countries by WACS, which educates and supports girls in undertaking projects to protect their communities from climate change. Now, you might be wondering how these demands can be made a reality, but it begins with each and every one of us, and it starts now. We must lobby for gender-sensitive policies, support organizations towards working these goals, and champion change at every level. We are on a journey to 2100, a year that symbolizes hope, and it's our responsibility to ensure that hope becomes a reality. Empowering young women and girls for climate resilience is not just a demand, it's an imperative. Let's stand together and be the architects of a brighter, more resilient future for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fumane. You have made me dream of this world in 2100, and I'm sure for so many other people too. we're already more than halfway through our time together. Can you believe it? Maybe we need to stretch a little bit. It's already been over an hour, and we've had our passions ignited with inspirational insights, gone deep into the importance and the potential of this COP, and heard from young leaders about the innovative ways that they're making an impact in their communities. Now, as we move into this next discussion, we're going to get into the leadership practicalities of what turbocharging the SDGs and investing in a road to 2100 looks like in practice. And I know we have you excited about that road to 2100, but just as a quick check-in on the basics, I would love to know how everyone is feeling about sustainable development goals with our next poll. Having just completed in the midpoint check-in for the SDGs at the SDG Summit just 2 months ago, when we know that driving progress we want to see has been hard, I would love to know, what do you think the SDGs are? Why do you think the SDGs are something that we should strive to achieve? I certainly have countless reasons for this, but I see people filling it in. They are our collective goal as humanity indeed. We only have 7 years left and there's still time to turn things around. People are saying they are attainable. We are building a better future. I think we are all optimistic. And so this provides us a perfect segue into our next session, where we will dive deep into the road to 2100 and turbocharging the SDGs. This interactive session will deep dive into the road to 2100 and also make us look long-term, looking even further forward than COP to the Summit of the Future next year as well, where climate will definitely have to be a huge priority. I will be joined by the following incredible speakers during this discussion. We have Ayana Christine, or Tintin, who's the current OIC National Program Secretary of the YMCAs in the Philippines. She's also the General Secretary and co-founder of the YMCA of Albay in the Philippines, and also the chairperson of the Green Team Philippines and the initiator of the Youth-Led Solutions on Climate Action between the Philippines and the US Coalition. Welcome, Tintin, to join us. We also have Kathleen Sherwin, serves as Plan International's inaugural Chief Strategy and Engagement Officer as of January 2023. She leads the efforts to let the world know who we are, to engage and connect people and partners to generate strategic and collaborative partnerships, supporting the delivery of our global strategy to 2027, which is called All Girls Standing Strong. Welcome, Kathleen. And we also have Jerome Foster with us, who's also the youngest ever White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council member, advising President Joe Biden and developing policies on climate change, environmental justice, federal sustainability, and other areas that affect the health and well-being of Americans on the planet. He's also the co-founder and co-executive director of White Up, an international charity that mobilizes and empowers young people to vote, advocate, and take action on the most pressing issues of our time, such as climate justice, racial justice, and human rights. So welcome to all three of you. I know those were impressive bios, but people want to hear from you. I'm going to direct one question to each of you, and then we'll also be able to go to a Q&A. So to everyone who's been using the Q&A, please keep doing so, and we'll get to your questions in a minute. Let me start with you, Tintin. The SDGs and the 20th Century Agenda have been a victory on the international community, with many highlighting that if they were negotiated today, they wouldn't be able to achieve such a bold global agreement on these shared goals. What do you see as the greatest strength of the SDGs, and why are they worth rallying behind?
Thank you for that question, Ines, and good evening from the Philippines. So for me, the greatest strength of the SDG is the coming together of the global leaders and other stakeholders to work collaboratively to attain our ambitious goal of a sustainable future. And, if all our global leaders would call for a policy, or even if he would call the people of all the nations, of their nations, to do certain things that will help, our environment, our world today, it will be a great impact for each nation and for their contribution to the world. And also, for me, it intensifies also the raising of awareness to the people to take actions that even with their very small actions, they are contributing to this big global goal that we are aiming to achieve in 2030. And of course, why are they worth rallying? Of course, this is to ensure better lives for all people, to reduce inequalities and pollution, and to preserve our environment for a long-term economic growth. So this is what we are all aiming for in the next coming, hopefully, 7 years or more. Thank you.
Definitely. You just mentioned 7 years. It's a lot of time if we think about it. Sometimes we say it's not a lot, but I think it is. And we are entering the second half of the 2030 agenda. Kathleen, let me come to you. What do you hope that we spend the most of our efforts on? And how does taking a 2100 perspective on this help?
Great. No, thank you. And thanks so much for having me. Look, the reality is if these goals, the SDGs, were negotiated today, I think we would not be able to achieve such a bold agreement. And I think that's really, really telling. And I think globally, we are witnessing a really terrible trend of shrinking civic space. And it's a threat to advocacy. And I think it's a threat to civic engagement. And we're also seeing increasingly polarization of political views on an international stage. So that's human rights, that's gender equality, that's climate action, which are obviously the foundations of the 2030 agenda. And we're seeing the impacts of this and the anti-rights movement being played out in the daily lives of young people, particularly the rights and freedoms of girls and the rights and freedoms of young women. So we won't succeed, I think, in delivering the SDGs by the 2030 deadline if we don't address this. The UN Secretary General has obviously called for stronger international cooperation by member states, and that's absolutely vital. And the emphasis, of course, is people and planet and peace and prosperity. But the thing that we need to all come back to and bring us together is we need to recommit to the common agenda, right? The goal was to reduce inequalities. The goal was to leave no one behind. The goal was that everyone benefits from the gains. And that is the recommitment that we need to be able to see. Now, obviously, besides member states, which are incredibly important, it is also about bringing civil society organizations like PLAN, community leaders like my panelists, and young people together to work on gender transformative policies and initiatives. But funding is also key to make this happen, right? We have to be able to have more mechanisms to be able to shift power and resources to those who are actively driving the SDG agendas. And that is girl and youth-led groups and organizations. So you asked it kind of about the 2100 perspective, kind of how this helps. And I think as we look at to the second half of the SDGs, people are naturally wondering, what are we going to do next? And we have the Summit of the Future next year. And so everyone's talking about what's post 2030. So I do think we have to look beyond the short term and consider how we lay the foundations for prosperity for future generations. And I think this perspective helps. So if we take a long-term view, we have to keep in mind, look, the global population doubled in just the last 50 years, right? We've gone from 4 billion to 8 billion people. Half of those are under the age of 30. So I think if we take the 2100 approach, it allows us to take a step back and really center in on the demographic now, which is young people, empowering young people, equipping young people, and ensuring that they're systematically engaged and included end-to-end on decisions that really affect their present and future. And then just lastly, coming from UN General Assembly, and I know I've seen some of you on the screen were with me, the one thing I do want to keep in mind is the SDGs in 2030 are not over. We have 7 years to still deliver on the commitments. And I really am inspired by hearing from young people that absolutely are going to hold member states also to account.
Thank you, Kathleen. And let's go to a young person, Jerome. Thank you for being with us and joining us again. Kathleen was mentioning member states, civil society, the need to leave no one behind, and I could see you nodding. We have talked a lot about the SDGs and why they're so important, and talking about the road to 2100, which I know the Unlock Coalition led the development of. Why do you think an ambitious mindset such as a roadmap to 2100 should be core on how we approach the next few years?
I think it's a really great question. And I want to thank you for inviting me back. It's great to be a part of these panels to really like set the stage around what COP28 should look like and many more future conferences around the climate crisis. I think especially when we talk about the next 100 years, like when we reach 2100, it's thinking about how do we realign ourselves with understanding the principles that were established by the SDGs in 2012. Like they were very much understanding and codifying what we already knew as human beings, the morals that we should have, and setting a target by 2030 that we should be able to achieve. I think the only thing that stands in our way at the moment is the legacy institutions, which kind of are relics of a sentiment of colonization and sexism and homophobia that are continuing to be a barrier towards progress. And I think that if we're able to kind of combat that centralization of power, which those very few individuals are able to wield control over people, and be able to democratize access to the things that SDGs are fighting for, then it's very quickly that we'd be able to do that, because I'm very sure the billions of people that are around the world have those morals in their heart from birth. And especially for Gen Z people, we understand the intersectionality between the SDGs. So it's only a matter of time before we see change that is very structural and very systemic. We just have to make sure that all the legacy institutions that we're entering, we don't adopt those confinements in the way that we continue to think as young people. Because I think the best thing about young people and why we're a part of leading so many social movements is because we have an expansive way of thought and are able to think about systems and corporations in a way that people have not thought about, and saying why, and questioning the kind of aspects of them that need to be changed. And I think really what we're thinking about now is a lot of it needs to be changed, and a lot of it needs to be changed right now. And I think that's what we really need to focus on in the next 7 years, dismantling those systems.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I think it links to a question that was asked in the chat earlier by Gopozzo, which I see Fernando is already typing an answer in the chat, which was very linked to COP. But the question was about how leaders are held accountable for previous COPs. And I think we can expound that to how leaders are currently being held accountable on how we're achieving the SDGs. So Jerome, I see you nodding. I would love to come to you. And how do you hope to see accountability for leaders handled as we navigate the rest of this 2030 agenda?
Yeah, I think that's really good. I think a lot of ways in which you can hold them accountable is by having kind of more enforceable kind of agreements that are made, because a lot of the agreements that they're having right now are very, very loose and very flexible for them. So they can kind of completely say one thing and then have big talk and empty promises when they get back home. And I think that's the biggest change that has to happen, is by holding them accountable like locally as well. Like I know that might not happen in a lot of other countries, but in the US, we have a lot of impact to be able to hold them accountable, like within states, within local elections, within a lot of different ways in which you can vote them out and kind of change the elected official. But I think within countries that don't have that access to democracy, it's about holding them accountable through international solidarity by the countries that can use the power of democracy to call them out, to put pressure on them through programs, through ways in which we can make sure that they understand that we have to be in this together, and that it isn't just competing and kind of only focusing on one country or one people or one culture, but focusing on the culture of humanity and then the people that need to be saved because of the fact that we have not had that culture in the past 100 years. That accountability comes from us continuing to rise up, continue to use social media, and continue to be on the streets demanding change.
Definitely. And I think that solidarity that you mentioned, Sad mentioned at the start, in the march that happened in New York, and us needing that really to drive it forward, and also solidarity towards future generations that are yet to come. There was a question that Amna asked in the chat that I'd love to share to you, Kathleen. Would you say that by ensuring gender equality, we're getting closer to meeting all of the SDGs?
Right. Well, I wish I had more optimistic, sort of updates. I mean, obviously, we're, over 100 years away from closing the gender equality gap. So, I don't think we're there yet. But hey, look, when you think about the SDGs, they're all cross-cutting. Gender equality, addressing gender inequality are cross-cutting to reaching all of the SDGs. So, if we're able to bring everyone with us, including adolescents and young people, that's really the success. So I do think gender equality is the key cornerstone. I'm completely biased, but key cornerstone to reaching the SDGs. But keep in mind, we're behind in all aspects of every SDG. 12% of SDG targets are on track, I think, for 2030. I think it's 12%. And the other issue And someone talked about accountability. So just looking in the chat, I think, Owen, thank you for that. You know, we only have about 45% of the data required to track progress on the SDGs, including the SDG on gender equality. So we actually don't really know. Women and girls are effectively invisible right now. If you only have half of the data, you're missing half of us. I'll speak as a woman, half of us. So I really do think that while data's, not everything, that getting that data to hold member states account to the commitments that they've made is incredibly important. So, INGOs like Plan partner with young people to really be able to help ensure that there's a platform for young people to be able to account, and data, I think, is a big piece of that. I would say second to that, of course, is financing. We talk to young people all the time. We did a survey, and 54% of young people that we surveyed who are advocates said, look, the financing to be able to advocate for the SDGs is what's holding them back. So we need to make sure that we're unlocking the financing as well, and we're getting that data for all of us, not just 50% of us.
Thank you, Kathleen. Yes, that data that you just shared on 12% of the SDGs being on track is very stark and missing a lot of data, specifically on women and also on young people, I'm sure. You mentioned financing at the end, and that's certainly something that I mentioned earlier, but for those of you who've joined us in between, we're working on that in the Unlock the Future Coalition, hoping to launch next year a collective that will hopefully make that easier. But let me come with the last question from the chat to you, Tintin. Yvette has asked, how can we strengthen youth advisor and mentors to facilitate the achievement of intended goals? What are your thoughts on that?
I would say we should have a continued support for youth-led innovation. I've been working with the YMCA on youth-led climate actions, and we have been really doing global coalition. In fact, right now I'm working with YMCA in Michigan, who these young people we have involved with created his own foundation about AquaChain on making water potable or drinking water, especially in their place where there are lead contents. And now we are bringing it here in the Philippines because of this global collaboration on climate action. And of course, we have to provide a space for young people to talk about things that affects them and to give inspirational stories, because through these stories we will be able to motivate young people to work for their future, for our future, and for today. We will be their mentors, and we can inspire them as well and create resource of the future. So what we are doing right now, actually, in our project, we have this educational curriculum wherein we created, and we have been using this for 3 years already with the YMCA USA. So us, the two countries who are having this coalition, are working together, and we in the Philippines are capacitating other YMCAs in different parts of the globe to raise awareness. So we have been training eco leaders, and these leaders are recruiting, engaging, involving, and multiplying allies. And every year we meet together online so we can share our stories, what we have accomplished together. And of course, we have to mentor each of these young people that we have been working with. We have to have connections, we have to have relationships, we have to mentor them for them to multiply and to engage more young people with their programs and projects.
Thank you so much, Tintin. And you raised the topic of education, which I could also say is very cross-cutting, just as gender is, just the climate is, so many things are. And you also mentioned storytelling, which I will keep plugging in, but this Road to 2100 includes financing, storytelling, includes global moments. So do read it if you haven't. It is on our website. But without further ado, I will thank you all for joining me on this panel. And we're going straight into the next one, moderated by our Next Generation Fellow for Future Generations in Mexico, Claudette. I will hand over to you. And while I do that, I would love people to write in the chat what words describe your journey as a young leader and activist. Claudette, over to you.
Thank you, Inez. It is my absolute pleasure to be here dialing in from Mexico City, and welcome everyone to Power Panel number 2. Today, we're diving into the heart of the matter. What skills do we need for sustainable impact on the road to 2100? Now, this isn't just a discussion, it's a guide crafted by those leading the change. As we journey through the complexities of climate activism, we'll uncover challenges and, more importantly, strategies for resilient action. Without any more delay, let's dive into introducing the panelists. Our first panelist is Dominic Palmer, a UK-based climate justice activist. Dominic is a coordinator at Climate Life and part of the steering committee for the Youth Climate Justice Fund. Now let's welcome Bodhi Patil, founder of Inner Light and co-creator of Ocean US Prize. Bodhi is a passionate ocean climate solutionist and is also a youth advisor for One Deck Fisheries AI and World Ocean Day. Our third panel is Lydia Dai, who co-established and was the regional youth focal point on UNYF, the first and largest youth constituency on water and climate supported by WMO. For the last 2 years, she has been the contact point for Youngest Adaptation Working Group. Last but not least, Owen Gaffney, a strategist, futurist, and chief impact officer at the Nobel Prize. Owen resides in a forest outside of Stockholm. Co-leading Earth for All and co-founding the Explanation Roadmap Initiative, Owen is a dedicated activist. Now, it's time to start with the panel, and for time's sake, I would appreciate if you could keep the answers concise. The first question is, as we approach COP28, many young leaders are facing feelings of despair, disengagement, or anxiety around the climate crisis. How do you stay present to the realities, or when drawing from your experience as a strategist and futurist?
That's an incredibly difficult question. How do we stop despair setting in? I think, I published a book last year called Earth for All, and I think one of the most remarkable things in the book is that everything we're talking about here today, everything we're gathered around here today is achievable. We need to halve emissions by 2030 in 7 years. As I was discussed in the last panel, that actually is a long time. You can do a lot in 7 years. We can, and we physically, technically can halve global emissions in 7 years. So that gives me a lot of hope. And in the long-term perspective, with the whole, the whole agenda, the SDG agenda, a few decades ago, we didn't know we could run an entire global economy on clean energy. We did not know how we could defuse the population bomb. We did not know we could feed or how to feed 8 billion people growing to 10 billion people a sustainable diet. We had very big concerns about these kinds of things. We didn't know how to end poverty. And now with all of those four things, I mean, this gives me so much hope and optimism that right now we're the first generation to actually know how to do that, how to achieve it, and first time in the history of civilization. So that's very, very empowering. The risk is we're not doing it fast enough, and we don't have a big enough coalition of the willing around that agenda, and that's what we need to drive.
Yeah, I think I also echo that, and I think it's a very good question on how we really manage with the issue of like the climate crisis also being a mental health crisis, and these feelings of despair and disengagement that can arise, and the kind of eco-anxiety as a term that has risen due to this. And I think something for me that I often speak to people about and try and engage young people in is the idea of not only creating hope and inspiring hope, but hope being something that we build on together and approaching climate justice and the future, the sustainable future, in a collective way, because many young people do feel the kind of the weight of the world on their shoulders, and remembering that this is an entire movement of people, and even if you need a break to step back, there are other people to step in and take the role, and try not to individualize eco-anxiety and mental health issues, because these issues and eco-anxiety has been caused due to the system that we do exist and due to the crisis that we face, and rather taking a collective and communal approach to it, and also realizing that it's it's not a problem with you that you are feeling like this about the crisis. It is a human response to have that reaction, but in that we can then embrace those emotions, but also use that and funnel that into our action and what we do. And like what I often do is look at past movements, incredible movements that have galvanized and changed history, and they did the impossible. They made the impossible possible, and we truly can do the same thing again. So I personally constantly reflect on past movements and look at how we can also do that now with the climate movement to really keep our resilience going and keep hopes and spirits high.
Thank you both, Owen and Dominic. We have a room full of passionate and committed young leaders here with us today, and many of them are working to make a positive impact and accelerate the SDGs. Lydia, considering your advocacy and coordination roles, what would your advice be for young leaders looking to increase the scale and impact of their work?
Thank you so much, Claudette, for this very engaging question. So we have, I think there's two ways to think about this. So on the one hand, there is a lot of young leaders engaged with work on the ground, who are more focused on implementation, the practical side of things. And there's young people focused on more on the policy side of things, working with their governments or maybe working on the international level, engaging in international policies. So I think for the young people who are more working on the practical side, one thing to upscale your impact is to try to understand the policy process in your communities on the subnational and national level, and also try to perhaps engage with international environmental policies if you have the avenue to do so. And by doing so, you can tackle policy barriers that are hindering implementation, and perhaps also tackle some of the obstacles that are in your way to upscale the practical work. At the same time, it's very important to measure the impact of your work, because oftentimes we have a lot of great ideas, but it's very hard to access funding or showcase our impact. So this is something I think a lot of us can work on, so actually quantitatively and qualitatively measure impacts and showcasing them so they can be replicated. And for those doing work on the policy level, for these young people, I would recommend them to try to understand the challenges when it comes to implementation, try to think about the practical aspects. Me, myself, I'm focused on adaptation. So for instance, you can think of how, what are some of the technical challenges when it comes to adaptation strategies? How do they look like when you implement them on the ground? How do we integrate local and indigenous knowledge into the policies to address some of the social concerns, so we can have a more holistic approach? So this would be very briefly my recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure they will benefit from them. Now let's turn to Buddy. With your experience galvanizing people around the world to understand the connection between ocean health and human health, we would love to know your advice for young leaders looking to scale their impact.
I think the biggest piece of advice that someone told me is ask for help. And I think by asking for help, it really builds on what Dami was saying about how this isn't an individual issue, and the action of collectively building coalition, building community is something so powerful. And the strength of building transnational, transboundary, multi-generational communities towards specific goals. For me, those goals have been stopping deep seabed mining, protecting indigenous communities on coastlines, focusing on a global plastics treaty. A high seas treaty has been so important because people transcend their boundaries and barriers in order to see some of these collective goals. And so for me, in terms of self-care and radical hope, it also comes down to starting on an individual level about health, and this understanding that climate health is inextricably linked with human health, and that ocean health is directly connected to human health, and that we are operating within these systems of planetary well-being. So when it comes down to really taking the next steps to upscale your impact, you need to ask for help, because that's how you're able to grow, diversify your ideas. And I think a big piece of that is finding really good mentors. And I'll just share a brief story. In the first year of university 2 years ago, I reached out to the world's leading expert on ocean health and human health, who is my hero. Kind of geeky, but I loved her. And she agreed. I just sent her an email and she agreed basically to be my mentor. And over the last 2 years, she's helped me reach international spaces, national spaces, advocated for both policy on local and global levels, actually led campaigns, and given me kind of the academic credibility and the support that I needed to actually like upscale my impact, to actually deliver what I needed to do within that local context. So asking for help, asking for mentorship, and encouraging this idea of intergenerational knowledge exchange that we know is so impactful are 3 really useful tools to upscaling your impact and also staying healthy in the process of doing so.
Thank you, buddy. Yeah, definitely. Personally, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my mentor, so thank you for bringing that up. Now, many young people feel overwhelmed with the numerous challenges they could be working to address, often casting their net incredibly broad. Owen, your work affords you the opportunity to see impact work across a broad scope of areas. What is your advice to young people trying to work out there on how to focus their efforts?
Yeah, so well, we're in a completely new world for young people. You know, the kind of challenges we're facing now, and the kind of jobs and the kind of work we need to do just wasn't there 20 or 30 years ago. So I'm not sure I have. I think everybody's just learning on the job how to do things really. But I will say this, that you know, it's in our careers these days, we don't need to think of a single thing or a single, I'm going to be an engineer or I'm going to be a lawyer. You can be an engineer and a lawyer and a computer programmer and a politician and a writer and, you know, an advocate and campaigner. And I'd love to give the mindset that we can do all of these things at a super high level, super professionally, and go where our energy is. But I think the second thing is we need to really prioritize, you know, what do I want to achieve in the next year, 2 years or so? What's my passion? What needs to happen? What can I do most to support societal progress in these areas? And just set a really, really hard target and go, okay, right, I'm going to achieve this. This is what I can do. It's achievable. It's tough, but it needs to happen, and set that. And I love this idea, the mentor idea of just, that's so valuable, you know, having a kind of bringing, getting mentors from anywhere, and they don't have to be some, you know, older generation or anything. You can have a mentor who's younger than you, who's working in different spaces, etc. Find a good mentor or multiple mentors and just hang on to them. And there's a few ideas.
Thank you very much. Now, Dominic, as a multifaceted woman engaging in many initiatives, is there anything else you would like to add for navigating these challenges?
Yes, yeah, I definitely agree with what Owen said about how difficult it is to manage these challenges and kind of finding your focus and dealing with your capacity. So yeah, someone who has, as I say, I wear many hats and involved in many different initiatives and organizations, I have experience with how not to cast your net so wide. As with young people, we can often do that, and because we feel the urgency of the crisis, we also feel the urgency in everything that we need to do. And I think it's firstly so important, even before we get onto a practical level, to remember to prioritize your mental and physical well-being, to prioritize your health and realize how much capacity you have, because that is sustainable for the long term. And then secondly, again, is looking at where your focus lies, what brings you joy, what are your skills best used for? Is there a way that you can combine what you do in your work and your initiatives more with what brings you joy? And I'm part of an organization called Climate Live, which is a youth-led organization harnessing the power of music to engage, educate, and empower people to take action. And as someone who also loves music and has grown up loving music, it made complete sense to be part of something that combines that with advocacy in climate action, especially for those on the front lines of the climate crisis. So I think looking at how you are approaching your advocacy and the work that you're doing, and really choosing your focus and remembering that you don't need to tackle everything. And again, this is a communal and collective effort. And so there's a lot that we can all do together, working in our own areas and things that bring us joy and our focuses.
Thank you. All right, now it's time to open up the live Q&A. Young people, we've got a room full of brilliant minds here, so hit us with your question. Actually, we already have one. Amna has asked, what guidance would you give to students from the age of 13 to 15 that want to help advocate the advancements of the SDGs? Lydia, I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think that's a very great questions because oftentimes we can feel overwhelmed with all the options we have, all the different areas within the SDGs. So I personally find it very valuable to develop a deep expertise in a specific field that is aligned with the SDGs, identify focus very early on. And if it's hard for you to decide on one, then why not try it out, try out different areas you're interested in. But then really try to build a strong foundation on one or two specific thematic areas by surrounding your academic background, and try to get some practical experiences, some work experiences, some policy knowledge around that specific topic. So try to balance both depth and breadth at the same time. So while you're having this very strong thematic area of focus, I would also recommend you to understand the interlinkages of your field, between your field and other different topics, to understand how different decisions influence each other.
Thank you. Now, Dawe has asked for your reflections on the risk that geopolitical conflicts may overshadow events such as COP28. Do you think this is a risk? And is there anything that we can do to overcome this? So this is a quite a challenging question, so I would love to leave this open for any of our panelists to respond to.
I would love to address the last question really briefly first. I think you can't pour from an empty cup. So filling up your cup is really important, especially 13 to 15. And right now I'm in Bermuda sharing with hundreds of students exactly how they can do that with a toolkit for a strong body, calm mind, and vibrant spirit. And that's all about inner resiliency, so you can have climate resiliency. I think that also this point around inner resiliency and how that leads to climate resiliency within healthier communities, especially healthier coastal communities that are on the front lines of the climate crisis, especially within small island developing states or large ocean states, is a really good tool to addressing some of the larger geopolitical tensions. There has been a lot of strain on this resilience component, and I'd be really curious to hear also what the other panelists have to say about this, because amidst the war and the crisis right now, there's a lot of interesting things that will play out at COP28, both on the geopolitical level and also within loss and damage. One good piece of news, and I would love to pass it over and hear more from the other panelists, is that the World Bank will be administering the Loss and Damage Fund at COP28, which was decided on earlier this week. And that is a really strong note on how basically loss and damage reparations will be played from the global north to the global south in terms of finance for climate innovation, adaptation, mitigation. You guys know everything about that. So I think within the geopolitical tensions, we really need to unpack people's connection both to self and community and take a deeper dive on a personal level. So that's the resilience component.
Yeah, I'd like to speak shortly on the second question. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think loss and damage being on the agenda, also, like loss and damage reparations being on the agenda also shows that, you know, throughout all the climate work, throughout, you know, what is happening in the world, the climate work has been pushing through, and particularly in situations where people that involve marginalized people and those on the front lines of the climate crisis, those who are disproportionately impacted by the crisis. Within these different geopolitical situations, it also highlights the need for what we're doing for you know, the SDGs, for these interlinkages with social justice and climate justice and health and climate. And so I think there's always, despite what is happening in the world, there's always those chances to show the linkages, and it's now even more of a crucial time for it. Many people talk about refugees and climate, and you know, there's just because we have so much linkages, and especially that we see that with the SDGs, we have to remember that that always linked to the work we're doing with climate, and these geopolitical situations will always be happening, but we can still like push forward the climate work in linking those together and continuing to push for the future we know is possible.
Thank you. And as our final point for discussion, we have also had a question on if social media is effective in helping drive climate action. Owen, do you see as the merits and weaknesses of using this platform to drive progress?
So yeah, absolutely. You know, I think social media has changed the whole media ecosystem, and I mean it really has allowed big movements to grow very, very rapidly at a global scale. And I think Fridays for Future and Me Too movements were not possible without social media. So there were so many positives to that. So it can change things, but also it's not neutral. And we're seeing, you know, rise in right-wing politicians, in populism, in homophobia, in racism, etc., because of social media. And this worries me. And those agendas, those narratives are winning out. I mean, we can see that in elections around the world, and it worries me because next year we have a bunch of very, very important elections. The geopolitical situation is going to affect those elections, and because of that geopolitical situation, people feel economically insecure, and this will be used on social media to drive populist movements unless we're very, very careful. So this worries me. This keeps me awake at night, that we're not winning the narratives on social media. Things are happening. There's some great progress and great things happening, but it's not winning the narrative at the moment. So what can we do about that?
Thank you, Owen. And as we start wrapping up this panel, I will ask each of the speakers to end with one sentence on any reflections you think will be worth sharing with the audience. Lydia?
Sure, I can start. Maybe I would say that fighting for climate change is a very challenging journey, and just to getting your voice heard can be very frustrating sometimes. Doesn't matter how talented you are, how hardworking you are, there's always gonna be obstacles. You will always there will always be occasions where you just feel overwhelmed by what's happening in the wider geopolitical situation, that your efforts are undermined. But I would just say keep going and really never give up, because it's really a collaborative and shared work that we all have to take on, and all of the endeavors in different areas have to be going on at the same time. If it's activism work you're doing, if it's practical work you're doing, if it's policy work, so all of these processes have to happen at the same time. So just don't give up and educate yourself as much as possible.
Thank you. Now, Bobby, do you have a one sentence reflection you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah, 2 sentences. The next generation, our generation, has the power to reverse climate change, and the oceans also hold the superpower to reverse climate change. So the oceans are the largest carbon sink. And I think it's really important at this COP28, we've had 27 of them before, to really focus on the power of intergenerational collaboration and what adult-led organizations and intergovernmental agencies can do to support investing in youth, mentoring youth, and supporting youth-led ocean and climate solutions. So I'll end with that, and we gotta keep it moving. So let's go, team.
Thank you. Dominic, is there anything else you'd like to add?
To remember that the power of the people is truly monumental throughout the difficult work, and that success is not linear, but we are truly making moves and we are making things happen. And remember coalition building, to reach out to communities around you and other groups and organizations and ask for help. And there's a lot that is moving now to support more young people and giving them the resources. So remember that, and yeah, let's keep going.
Thank you. Finally, Owen, would you like to wrap up with one last reflection?
Well, it's all been said, I think, very, very well. I just say that the best way to predict the future is to create it, and we have that power to create the future. You know, the history's already been written. We can't do anything about that. The next chapter of humanity has not been written yet. We write it. We take control of that narrative, and we own it. And you know, it starts now.
Now, thank you all. What an incredible journey we've embarked on during this thought-provoking panel on resilient activism for a resilient climate. From galvanizing support to coping with eco-anxiety, our panelists have addressed crucial aspects of being effective advocates for change. And in particular, the importance of self-care has resonated throughout our discussions. As we delve into this space, let's not forget that self-care isn't just a luxury, but a vital investment in sustaining our passion and impact. And to the passionate young leaders in our audience, remember that taking care of ourselves is not just about individual well-being. It's a powerful tool for collective resistance and long-term change. Now I'm thrilled to hand over to our wonderful moderator, Ines. Over to you.
Thank you, Claudette, and thank you to all of our speakers. Since you saw me last on this call, I've had to turn the lights on. You'll see it's getting dark. So we're nearing the end of our time together, and I hope that you're feeling inspired and ready to make your mark, be it in your local community or at a global level. Our shared future needs you and embodies words, let's go team. Let's reach out to each other and ask for help, just like Dominique said. And I am going to ask you for help just before I let you go. We want to hear from you. As we approach the end of 2023, we want to capture the passion, progress, and impact of this incredible group of young people. We will do this by launching the Engine Room Report early next year, which will spotlight the work and contributions of members of the Engine Room, and we want to hear from you. We're inviting you to contribute to the Engine Room Report by the end of this year for the chance to have your reflections, progress, and impact featured in this publication. So you can complete the form in the QR code, sharing as much with us as you can, and you will hopefully see yourself featured in the report. The deadline for this is the 19th of December, and you'll also see the link in the chat for it. For those of you who are all too eager to dive into what next year can look like for you and how you want to make your mark as we approach the Summit of the Future, the great news is that you do not need to wait. You can sign up to join the Engine Room right now and be the first to know about opportunities to be at the heart of this journey. Again, you can scan the QR code on the screen or also click on the link in the chat. You can also follow us on social media, and I know people were asking for social media links in the Q&A, so make sure to follow our social media to stay up to date with the wider Engine Room community and get your mini doses of inspiration between our different pit stops. And I will end with a huge thank you from the team and I. Also a huge thank you to the team behind the scenes, Taylor, Lewis, Pablo, Danley, who are actively working behind the scenes to make this happen today. Our hope and our passion and excitement for the future is built on our belief that it is young leaders like you that are driving the change. So thank you for being present. To those of you who stayed till the end, thank you so much. Let's continue to be passionate and ready to take on the road to 2100 with us. Thanks everyone, and we will see you on action on the ground. Take care.